Welcome back to Achampnator Reads with Chapter 3 of The Last Elf. Chapter 3. By the time the woman reached the hill, the light was fading. Yor's heart swelled as soon as he spotted her. Breathless, the woman dropped into the mud. The dog was with her. "It was a hunter," she said, panting. "With a bow. I managed to give him the slip." "Oh," said the little one, genuinely impressed. "And what will he do with the slip?" "No," the exasperated woman explained. "It just means I left him behind." "Ah, I understand," lied the elf. "What's a bow?" he asked. The dog started barking. "Call off your dog," said a Call off your dog, said a voice. Suddenly the little elf understood what a bow was. A curved piece of wood with a piece of string attached to it, so tightly that it could fire an iron-tipped stick at the woman's heart. The hunter was even taller than the woman, with dark hair that fell all over the place, above and around his face, and yes, he did have a beard. His clothes looked warmer than clothes made of cloth, and from his belt there hung an impressive collection of daggers and a hatchet. He had appeared from behind the little elf. While the woman thought she had given him the slip, he had crept around the wood from the back. He and the woman stood staring at one another, and then the woman whistled to the dog. The hunter lowered his bow. "I just want a bit of fire. Mine's gone out. I just want to relight my fuse. I saw you had some." The woman studied him. "Nothing else?" "Nothing else." Another long look passed between them, and then the woman nodded. "Give him the fire," she said. "Hey, I'm talking to you. Give him the fire." "Where have you put it?" "I hid it over there," the little elf said. "Really?" said the woman. "Okay, good idea. Where exactly did you hide it?" "There, in the pond, under the water, so that no one can see it," the elf said proudly. It was so nice to win approval. He remembered the times when his grandmother held him in her arms and told him he was the best little elf in the world. He was filled with the happiness you felt when the spring wind blew away the clouds when spring had still existed. He trotted cheerfully down the hill toward the pond. The rain had stopped. A pale strip of blue appeared between the clouds and was mirrored in the water, where the little one bent down to pull out the stick with its iron ball. Little streams of water trickled out of it. The man and the woman had followed him, watching him in silence. The woman sat down on a tree trunk and put her head in her hands. "You've put it out," she said in a strangled voice. "Yes, of course, it makes it easier to hide." He gestured with its arm to indicate the act of hiding something, and the shawl fell from him, revealing his yellow clothes. "He's an elf," said the hunter in astonishment. "Yes, that's right. He's an elf," the woman confirmed in a toneless voice. "Are you trying to make life difficult for yourself?" asked the man. "No, that happens all of its own accord," the woman replied. "Has he got powers?" "No, he's just a child." "One born lately," the little one agreed. The man had no intention of giving up. He turned back to the little elf. "Do you know how to light fire?" "Yes, I think so. I've never done it, but everyone knows how to light fire." The woman raised her head and looked at him, aghast. "Then light it," the hunter said. The little elf put his hand to the dry iron ball. that the hunter had taken from his knapsack. He closed his eyes. The image of fire filled his mind, warmed his nostrils. Its heat glowed in his memory. When he opened his eyes again, fire was flickering inside the ball. The woman was breathless. You can light a fire without tinder? Yes. Why didn't you tell me? You hadn't asked me. I asked you if you had powers. Yes, I replied. Big powers. Breathing, eating, being alive. Fire lightning is a little power. You have to raise the temperature and fire is born. Everyone knowing how to do that. I don't, said the woman. No? The little one was flabbergasted. That's impossible. Everyone knowing. And if we know how to light a fire, why do we carrying tinder around with us? Because you're humans, the little one explained serenely. You're stupid. Are you being punished for something you did in another life, or do you have some other reason for dragging an elf around with you? The man seemed to be growing more and more perplexed. Despite the joy of your company, I'll leave the two of you at the first village we come to. People don't like it when you light fires with your thoughts. Why not? It's easier than carrying a ball full of fire. You could burn a person or a house with a person in it, or 2, or 15. The idea was so appealing that the little elf closed his eyes and groaned with pain. Inside his head he could see the burned bodies and smell the charred flesh. He shuddered with horror, then began to cry. Not the usual string of whimpers and squeals, but a long howl, full of high-pitched groans and heart-rending wails. "Make him stop!" shouted the man. "Make him stop! It's unbearable!" "See what you've done!" the woman snapped back. "Please, little one, everything's fine. Nothing has happened. It's just a figure of speech." Figuring speech! The little one was indignant, and yet it worked. He stopped crying. Figuring speech. How dare you? How can you? How can you dare to say something with all that pain in it just for figuring speech? He started crying again. The man sat down on a tree trunk, taking those long breaths just like the woman. The sky opened up. The first stars they had seen in weeks began to appear. "I've got a rabbit," said the man. "I caught it this morning. You've given me the fire. I've got a rabbit. And it stopped raining. So let's pitch camp and eat something. My name is Monsieur." Silence fell for a moment, just a short moment. "Saria," said the woman. The little elf stopped wailing. "Do rabbits have little kernels like corn cobs?" George inquired quickly, brightening at the word eat. The man started laughing. "No," he said. "Rabbits have beautiful fur, so you can keep your feet warm afterward. Look. He opened his bag so that the little elf could take a look. George put his hands on the rim of the bag and cheerfully peered inside. The idea of something that would warm his stomach and his feet as well was simply heaven. Not even his grandmother, who knew everything, had ever mentioned such a treasure. So perhaps humans weren't so... A long scream pierced the moors. A long, terrible scream filled with all the grief in the world. "It's a corpse!" cried the little elf. "Look, he's been hit with a pointed stick, and now he's dead. Are you going to eat a corpse?" Why elves eat rabbits alive? The man was exasperated. "Elves never eat anything that has thought, that has run, that has been hungry. and has been feared death. Grandmother said that humans eat what's been alive with rosemary. Is there any rosemary here? I don't want to be eaten. And the little elf plunged once again into his moaning, heart-rending wail. The woman put her head in her hands. Exactly what dreadful thing did you do in that former life of yours? Did you sell your mother? Asked the man. I think it's better if you go. Thanks for the offer of the rabbit. It doesn't matter. You've got fire. So, see you. You're not going to give up a piece of rabbit for him. I know it's madness, but I can't bear to hear him crying. Please, go. I can't, said the man uncertainly. Why? I can't abandon a young woman in the moors. It would be dangerous enough if you were on your own, let alone with him tagging after you. Thank you, noble sir. I've managed this far on my own. I don't need any help. Take your... Hang on. What's he doing? The woman turned to look. The little elf had picked up the rabbit and was stroking it gently. His fingers slowed where the fur was drenched in blood. His eyes were closed, and he seemed to be dreaming. He had stopped crying. What on earth are you doing? The hunter asked. I'm thinking, the little elf replied. Thinking? What about? About him. About the rabbit. Rabbit, the hunter corrected. Rabbit, I'm thinking about how he breathed, how he ran. Yes, he felt smells tickling his nose. The last thing he smelled was wet leaves and mushrooms. He didn't smell the hunter. There was a smell of wet grass and mushrooms. Yes, a good smell. I'm thinking about how he breathed, the blood flowing inside him. The rabbit quivered, opened its eyes and held them open, with terror for a few quick intakes of breath, then shook itself, leaped off to the ground and started running. It avoided the hunter's feet, hurtled between the dog's paws, leaped over the tree trunk the woman was sitting on, and then, after one final swerve, disappeared forever into the cane thicket. The little elf wondered if Rabbit might be a good name for the dog. Perhaps not. They were a bit similar, but the shapes of the tails were completely different. The man and the woman stood for a long time staring at the spot where the rabbit's white tail had disappeared. The little elf looked exhausted. He crouched, trembling on the ground, then slowly began to get his strength back. The dog came and lay next to him, and the elf hugged it. It was now completely dark, except for the stars that began to shine on the pond. Apart from your mother, did you sell some of your little brothers? The man inquired. Rather than replying, the woman turned to the elf. Can you do that with people too? Humans, elves, trolls? Certainly not. You can only do it with little creatures that don't have much in their heads. The smell of water, the color of the sky. What's really easy is flies, mosquitoes, and gnats. You just have to touch them and dream of flying for a moment, and they start buzzing again. Really? Said the man. How wonderful in the summer. Someone who can save mosquitoes is valuable company. Someone who can revive mosquitoes and bring my dinner back to life. The one time I had any. You're a dream come true. How did I manage to live without you? Can you do anything else? Asked the woman. Can you multiply corn cobs? We've got one. Can you turn it into 3 or 5? They really were stupid. Of course not. You can't multiply matter. And what about bring a dead rabbit back to life? The woman asked. That you can do. A creature dies when it loses its energy, its strength. Fire goes out too when it loses its strength. Bringing a creature back to life is like lighting a fire. Just a little transfer of energy from inside my head to outside my head. The hunter turned toward the woman. Come away, he said. Come away, it's dangerous. Leave him here and come away. I can't. Well, yes, he's a child. A pup, corrected the man. One born lately, the little elf clarified. There was a silence. The woman shook her head. Right then, ladies and gentlemen, the man said. It's been a real pleasure to meet you. I would even say it's been genuinely fun. I wouldn't like all this happiness to hurt me, so I'm setting off again, on my way as a horrible hunter who squashes mosquitoes, lives by eating rabbits, and prospers by selling their skins. And should our paths ever cross again, I hope I'll have time to run away before you see me. The little elf seemed interested in this discovery. Oh, really? Don't humans like being happy? So that's why you spend so much time trying to make yourselves miserable, not just because you're stupid. No, the hunter replied. Human beings, as a rule, try to be happy. What I said is called irony. I'm going because your company prevents me from being happy, or even from eating my rabbit. But rather than saying one thing, I say its opposite. Humans sometimes do that. Do you understand? Yes, of course, the little elf lied. They really were they really were stupid, crazy and stupid, hopeless. Wait, said the woman. I'll give you my corn cob. It was awful that you lost your rabbit. She pulled the last corn cob out of her knapsack and held it out. The little one watched the yellow kernels changing ownership. His eyes lost their sparkle, and sadness swept across his face, but he didn't dare breathe. Is that the only one you've got? Yes, the woman replied. She too looked as though she had just buried her mother and her little brothers. The hunter thought for a moment, then slung his quiver and bow over his shoulder, and sat down on the only flat rock on the hill. Well, the rabbit's gone. I'll stay here tonight, and we'll share it. The sky clouded over, but the rain didn't start up again. They pitched camp on a dry rock. The corn cob roasted. The hunter cut it into three, and they ate it slowly, one kernel at a time. And then the little elf nodded off and slept like a log. For a few moments before he fell asleep, he thought of a name for the dog. He who runs in the wind seemed nice, but he knew that it was a little too long to be acceptable. Once sleep had enveloped the little elf, the hunter covered him with his fur jacket to keep him warm. He also pulled the elf's jerkin up over his head, over his eyes, his ears, and his nose. Then he took a smaller knapsack out from beneath his quiver, and from it he pulled a quail. He plucked it in furtive silence. The woman helped him as best she could. They put the bird on the fire, downwind from the little elf, and when it was cooked, or at least not too raw to be edible, they finally ate it. This time they ate it in silence and in a hurry, like two thieves, always glancing at the bundle that consisted of the little sleeping elf. When they finished, they gave the bones to the dog, who made them disappear into his stomach, and gathered up all the feathers. Then the hunter crept off to dig a little hole and hide them. Then, at last, they all fell asleep. That was chapter 3 of The Last Elf. Next time, I will read you chapter 4. But till then, have a good night, good evening, or good morning, or wherever you watch this video. See ya.